All right, everybody, welcome to Behind Thur Scenes. This is the show where we will be filming a live video. So there is no intro. We're going to be filming so that I can eventually get to these things and start cutting them up. So thank you so much for showing up. Give me 1 second while I invite the rest of the people in here. Let me go live here on Facebook, live on Instagram, and then let me connect their chats while we do it. This is normally what I'm panicking to do right before we start the shows, and that should be good. Okay, we are in. Let me explain real quick again what Behind Thur Scenes is. Basically, for a long time, we've been doing live shows, which, while a lot of fun for us who hang out at them, it can be somewhat off-putting to people that either come to them live or watch them at another time. So these shows are meant to be shot so that we get everything right, so that we become... I'm going to turn the music off. Keith doesn't mind. There we go. So I can't hear it. Basically, what we're doing is you're watching the process of me shoot a video that will be cut down into the requisite parts. Tonight, I figured it is about time that I teach you guys about one of my day jobs. One of my day jobs is leading corporate classes in bourbon tastings, mostly, sometimes whiskey tastings in general, sometimes rum, sometimes tequila, but certainly bourbon. So I'm going to lead you guys I'm going to tell you guys exactly how to lead a whiskey tasting. That's what it is. So get ready for it. Let me say hello to the people. First of all, let me say hello to the Scribe of Spirits. Whiskey tasting, that is exactly right. We're doing a whiskey tasting. Scribe of Spirits. If you want to see what everybody else is saying, whose name I do not put up on the place where yours is, right down there, pop on over to YouTube. Otherwise, we love having you over there on Instagram. So good to see you. Let me say hello to Roger G, checking in to see if anybody was here. People were here by evidence. Evidenced by, either way, our good friend Moose. Moose, happy Friday to Moose. It is Thursday, most places, Friday to Moose. Shiny Panda Baker, a good evening to you. Absolutely. Unless I've lost track of time zones, Moose, and tomorrow is already, yes, Moose is there. Bonbon, hello to Bonbon, good to see you. My good friend D is here. What's everyone drinking? A lot of people answered D. She's probably just still wondering what everybody's drinking. Probably can't even sleep tonight if you guys don't tell her. So please, somebody, for the love of God, for the love of the children mostly, tell D what you're drinking. Jeez Louise. Let me say hello to Kyle. Welcome to the live studio audience. That's exactly what you guys are. You guys are a live studio audience tonight. Oh, here we go. Bonbon is drinking the Mammoth Tooth or something like that. Yeah, it's the Mammoth Tooth was a spectacular cocktail. We made it the other day. Really, really nice. Did I say hello to Tiki Tom? Hello, Tiki Tom. Good to see you, pal. Amy Beer is here. We're going to see Amy Beer for the first time live. I'm going to, at least. Some other people have seen Amy Beer live, I'm sure, once or twice in her life, at Arizona Tiki Oasis, coming up April 25th through the 27th, where I'll be speaking and judging the what do you call it, the bartender battle. I couldn't think of it, and I just stared deeply into the camera. There's our good friend Paul Bellinardo. Somebody did mention a whiskey tasting. That's what we're doing tonight. Let me say hello to the Low Carb Cocktail Guy. Still trying to find a way to get to the Low Carb Cocktail Guy in March. That'd be great. Here's my good friend Lawrence Carroll. I don't call him Lawrence Carroll. I call him Naked. Hey, Naked. Good to see you. Oh, this answers a big question for me. I did not know who Davis Mountain Sky Island was. I'm taking a guess now and saying this is our good friend Bootopia. Cheers. And here's Mrs. Tiki Tom. First step is, of course, take everyone's keys away. Smart. Oh, and me and Naked are hanging out. That's good. Scotty DuBois is here, and love that. Okay. These Behind Thur Scenes make me way more nervous than the other ones because I know I got to get it right on these ones. The other ones, I don't feel like anybody's ever going to watch those. But these ones, I feel like somebody might eventually see this on the internet. And then since they know that I've edited it, they will know if I am lying about things. So let's get into it. This is my intro. All right, we're going to start with an intro. As much as I try my very best to tiki-fy my life, I have a look. I have a beard, I'm about 6 foot tall, and I have a large crop of hair up on top that goes straight to the ceiling. I do not necessarily look like a tiki guy. I look like a whiskey guy. And I have tried to fight that, but it turns out in my travels, I have learned a number of things about whiskey, about bourbon, and in that time, I have taught all of those things. And tonight, I'm going to teach you how to lead your very own whiskey tasting. All the tips and all the tricks. First step, dress for the occasion. Feel like putting on a nice smoking jacket obviously lends itself to having a better experience. All right, a little cosplay has never hurt anybody. All right, now that we're all dressed, ready to go, this is what we have to do. There are a few steps that you have to take before you start the whiskey tasting. Let's say that again. There are a few steps you have to take before you start the whiskey tasting, all right? The first step you have to do is know what whiskey you are tasting. Tonight we are doing bourbon, so you should know a little bit about bourbon. We're just going to start with a brief history, and then we're going to go over a couple of the rules, all right? Bourbon is an American invention, thought to be created, or at least the rules were thought to be created by a man named Elijah Craig. Elijah Craig was the first person to ever say, hey, notice the inside of that barrel? Ooh. Looks gross. We should burn it. He was the first guy to put the whiskey into new char white oak barrels. That is still a standard. In fact, it is a rule of bourbon. A new char white oak barrel, which means that the barrel that the whiskey goes into is charred once, charred as many times as you want, but it's charred. Then you put in the whiskey juice, let it sit in there for a little bit, and you pull the whiskey juice out. Now, once that barrel has been used for bourbon, it can never be used for bourbon again. It can be used for all kinds of other things, but not bourbon, all right? Another part of bourbon is specifically because Kentucky, where bourbon comes from, is overrun, more or less, by corn. The grain that we're putting into bourbon is at least 51% corn. All right, the mash bill is what that's called, is at least 51% corn. It can have 49% of just about any other grain, but it has to be 51% corn. Let me go over the rest of my notes because I get nervous and forgot about it. Oh, bourbon is an American invention, and thus bourbon has to be made in the good old US of A. This is America's favorite son, absolutely. There are a couple other rules. Just want to make sure I get them right. Bourbon has to be distilled at under 159 proof. It has to be it has to come out of the barrel at under 120 proof. That's not true. It has to come out of the barrel at around 120 proof, and it has to be bottled at over 80 proof, so 40% alcohol. And those are the rules of bourbon. Cool? Cool. That's what you need to know about bourbon. Now, it's time to learn about specific bourbons. Now, when I am choosing bourbons to put into a tasting, what I like to do is find similarities in the bourbon and then pick out the differences so that when we're tasting, we know this is similar, so we don't even have to think about that. But this is different, and that's where we get to start to find what we like about bourbon. The things that I personally, and I think the entire whiskey community likes to say are the characteristics of bourbon, are the things that make up bourbon, are as follows. Age. Bourbon has to be aged at least 2 years, but most likely for a straight bourbon or for most bourbons, it has to be aged. Bourbon has to be aged for at least 2 years, but ideally you want to age your bourbon for at least 4 years. But you can age it for as long as you would like, understanding that the longer you age it, the more evaporation happens, the less bourbon comes out. All right? Another thing to look at for bourbon is ABV, alcohol by volume. You can find a really overproofed in the 60s type of bourbon. You can also find a bourbon that is exactly 80 proof, 40% alcohol, and you can compare those two to see which of those you like better. The other thing that you can compare in bourbons is the mash bill. Now, not every single distiller likes to give up their mash bill. Famously, Sazerac, the company, is not interested in letting you know the specific mash bill. However, on their website, they will tell you which mash bill number they're pulling from, and they will explain what those mash bills are. They have a low rye, a high rye, they have a malted, etc., etc., etc. If you can look up the mash bill before you get to a whiskey, that's great. A lot of distillers will absolutely put their mash bill on the website, or I don't know, maybe they'll send you an email about it. I don't know why. If you can figure out about it that way. All right. How am I doing so far? I feel like I'm doing so far. Sean, Buffalo Spice is weeded. Buffalo Spice doesn't matter. Okay. All right. Since we now know that the wood won't change, the only things that'll change are the age, the ABV, the mash bill, and then we can get into temperatures and climates and stuff like that, but that's way down the road. We know that there's those three things. We know that those three things, since we know that there are those three things, we know that those three things produce specific types of tastes. When we're talking about bourbon, we are usually talking about five. We are talking about sweet. That is going to be things like your honeys, your caramels, your vanillas. We're talking about things like wood. That's when your bourbon tastes extra oaky. We're going to be talking about things like spice, which is going to be things like cinnamon that you'll be able to get out of the lignin in the wood, which is a polymer. I learned this a while ago. I just brought it back up. It's a polymer that breaks down when you burn the inside of a barrel. The whiskey is able to get in there, pull out the lignin, and you can get spices like that. You're going to get things like fruits, apples, stone fruits, etc. Then you're going to get things like florals. My favorite floral to look for in bourbon is always mint. You can always find a little mint if you start looking for it in bourbon. Some are big mint bombs and some are not. So you don't need to be prepared for every flavor on earth to come at you in a bourbon. Instead, just know those five categories and look for them. Maybe in each sip, look for a different thing, and you'll find a different thing every time. How great is that? All right, now, the bourbon we're going to be tasting tonight, I have two other bourbons that we can taste it against, but I think it's important that we just get one down specifically, and this is actually maybe my favorite at-home bourbon, and it was sent to me looking just like this. It says, Eagle Rare Bourbon. That's all it says. Eagle Rare Bourbon. All right. Looking up the bourbon quickly, I know that this is a... Dang it, I would have really liked to have remembered that right off the top. I knew it. Doing a quick search for this, we find out that this is a Sazerac brand bourbon. So the label is Eagle Rare. The brand is going to be, or the overall company is going to be Sazerac. Sazerac is notoriously secretive about their mash bill, so we don't know exactly what the percentages are. What percent is corn, what percent is rye, what percent is malted barley, what percent is malted rye, etc., 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 etc. However, we do know that this is a very low rye, so we do not have a ton of rye in this bourbon. So things that we might not find in this bourbon are going to be our spiciness. We're not going to find a lot of those cinnamons. We're not going to find that dry rye. So just knowing that, we can cut that right out. We also, by doing a quick search before we start the tasting, we know that this is a 10-year-old bourbon. It's also technically a single barrel bourbon. Technically, because they don't do it by hand anymore. This is a fun little fact I learned. They no longer do they no longer bottle by hand, so they can't be positive if at the end of the machine, when they're pouring the bottles, when they're pouring the whiskey into the bottles, if a bottle from, or if whiskey from one barrel and then a whiskey from the next barrel as you're starting the new barrels over, it gets mixed up. So technically, it's a very small batch, but for all intents and purposes, this is a single barrel. So we know that Eagle Rare will change with each additional barrel that comes out. So if you love a version of Eagle Rare, buy a lot of it because it might go away. All right. So if that's all you got from here, you know the name, you're able to look it up. You now know that the rules, you now know what to look for. You know the mash bill, at least somewhat. And you can figure out the ABV the same way. I know that this one comes in at about 90%. Okay. It really is. For some reason, when I do my normal show and I'm just yucking it up, I feel really good about that. Now that I have to give you guys facts, I'm out. I'm blank. I am lost. Very, very important part of bourbon tasting is the glass. This is the standard glass. It is called a Glencairn glass. It resembles a distiller's glass in that it is big and fat down here, and it is skinny up here. And also, it's made of glass. Please, oh please, oh please, if you are only going to be doing this out of red Solo cups, you are not prepared for a bourbon tasting. I am sorry. There's got to be something else. There has to be something else you could do with your Friday night. All right. The reason that this glass is shaped like this, one, the fat part down here is going to let enough air touch the bourbon. The bourbon will react with the air. The alcohol will evaporate out. The alcohol will bring the smells to your nose, and it'll also open up the whiskey. We'll talk about opening up the whiskey in just a little bit. The other part about this glass is this skinny part right up here. This is going to help direct all of the aromas to your nose so that you can, I guess, smell it. I guess this is so you can smell it. So that's what that's for. If you do not have a Glencairn glass, I totally understand. Let me give you a couple other examples of great whiskey tasting glasses. This is a snifter. Notice it's fat down here and skinny up here. And made of glass. That's what we want. Now, not everybody has a snifter. This is another great example of a whiskey tasting glass. This is a wine glass. Fat down here, skinny up here. That's what we're looking for when we are picking out our glassware for our whiskey tasting. If all you have, let me find a good one. Could have done this before, but I didn't. Could have done this before, but I waited. This right here is another fine glass to use for a whiskey tasting. Notice, it's glass. That's what we want. We want it to be glass, but it doesn't have the fat part at the bottom and the skinny part at the top, so you will lose some of the aromas. So we're going to go with our Glencairn glass, perfect for a whiskey tasting. Good. We're cruising along at this point, guys. I've mentioned the history of bourbon. That's all I need over there. General flavors. Yeah, got that. Learn the rules. Got that. Get the right glass. Okay, we're there. Oh, it's time to pour the bourbon. All right. There is a term called. Okay, let's give it maybe like a chapter opening. Give me 1 second. Oh, since we're all just here, taking a little break. There we go. Okay. Once you have your glass picked out, it's time to pour the bourbon. There is no correct amount of bourbon to pour. However, there is an optimal amount of bourbon to pour if you are using a Glencairn glass, and that is going to be to get it right to the fattest part of the glass. Most Glencairn glasses, I'm sure that there are some that break this rule. I'm sure that there are people that break rules all the time. But this one specifically is about 1.5 ounces of bourbon. All you got to do is eyeball it and pour it right in there until it gets to the fattest part. Right there. Excellent. Low Carb Cocktail Guy asking about a Copita glass, a perfect glass. Copita is a perfect glass to have your whiskey tasting in. I do not have a Copita glass here, so we're going to be using this guy instead. Okay, you have your bourbon poured. First thing you want to do is take a look. Bourbons will come in different shades of this brownish red color. Bourbon specifically cannot have any added color or flavors put into it at any point in the distillation. It's one of the only whiskeys that has that rule. You can color other whiskeys, you can flavor other whiskeys, but if you want to have it be real American straight bourbon, you cannot add anything else. So all of that color is coming from the wood. When bourbon starts out, let's do it like this. When bourbon starts out, it looks like this. This is unaged bourbon. It looks very much like water. Do not get the two confused. That will be a very, very rough dinner. So you put in basically the moonshine, the white dog, the white lightning into the barrels. The barrels have that bourbon sit in them for upwards of 2 years. And they start to get this color. Bourbons will all vary in their color by how much of those lignans that they get in there, how many of the polyphenols they get in there, all of that stuff. So take a look at the bourbon. Another thing to look for in bourbon is something called the Marangione effect. Now, Marangione effect is a really sort of fun way to just say, look for the tears. When you spin this guy around, you will start to see, as the whiskey collects up here, that tears start to fall down on the side. That's due to surface tension. That is due to the fact that alcohol evaporates. The reason that you can't do that with, say, Sprite, but you can do it with alcohol, is because you need something to evaporate out. If you're not using ethanol, please, oh please, oh please, please, oh please, do not do a liquor tasting with anything other than ethanol. All right, that's the only alcohol we do liquor tasting at. If you're doing it with methanol, you did not hear it from me that that's an okay thing to do. Plus, you won't be able to find me because you will be blind. But any kind of alcohol will stick to the sides of this glass, and it will tell us two different things. The more little tears that fall down, the more alcoholic the whiskey is. So even if you couldn't find the ABV on a website or through direct mail, however people get their stuff these days, if you can't find it there, you can get a pretty good idea by giving a little spin and watching the little tears drip down. The more tears, the more alcoholic it's going to be. The other thing we can learn from the Marangione effect is how big this whiskey is going to be. By big, I mean how much flavor, how much oak, how much sugar, how many oils are going to be in here. The slower those drip down, the bigger the whiskey is going to be. So I guess those things, because they're big, they're slow. I think that makes sense. You don't see a lot of like speedy giants, right? See a lot of speedy little elves, but not a lot of speedy giants. I've been reading a lot of Dungeons and Dragons lore recently, so I will start to mention Dungeons and Dragons a lot more. Hopefully you guys are okay with that. We're going to give that a spin. Take a look. Don't spin too much. If you spin too much, some of that alcohol will evaporate, and people will yell at you on the internet because people hate when alcohol evaporates on the internet. We've taken a look. We've noted the color, kind of a reddish brown in this instance. Nobody's getting drunk. Nobody's having a good time by looking at alcohol. I do sometimes, but most people. Next thing we want to do is look for the nose of this. Now, we don't look for it. We actually sniff for it. There's two ways that you can do a bourbon nosing or a bourbon aroma test. One, get it way down here, let it waft right up, and just bring it closer until you can smell it. There we go, right there. That's one way. There's a much more fun way, and that is this. Stick your nose as far into the glass as you can, open up your mouth, take a deep breath in, and look for those flavors. Remember, we only have 5 categories of flavors we're looking for. We're looking for sweet, we're looking for spicy, we're looking for wood, we're looking for floral, and we're looking for fruits. All right, so whatever you can find in there, that's what it is. Even if you have even if you have to search for a while, find everything you want. Check off those 5 things in each sniff. See if you find them in each subsequent sniff. In this one specifically, I'm getting things like stone fruit. I am getting a little bit of that cinnamon. I'm getting, I took some notes on it a little bit ago. There we go. I'm getting things like honey in this one. I am also getting something that smells a little bit like nail polish remover. Now, since that doesn't sound real appetizing to everybody, let me give you a little trick. If you end a sentence with something that sounds unappetizing, just extend that sentence a few more words and say, in a good way. Just 4 extra words, in a good way. I'm getting nail polish remover, in a good way. All right? That's one way of saying it smells like alcohol without just saying it smells like alcohol. It's a specific type of alcohol we're looking for. Great. Make sure at the end of your observations, write them down. Be as specific as possible. Don't just say it smells like alcohol. Say things like it smells like nail polish remover. If you want to say it smells like nail polish remover when I had a job cleaning golf balls in 1994 when I was, working at a golf club, hey, that's a much better description than just nail polish remover, right? Find a specific thing that you think this reminds you of. It'll start to help you get other memories, other flavors, other tastes. That's what we're looking for. We've looked, we've read, we've sniffed. Now it's time for the taste. When we taste whiskey, we want to taste it in when we taste bourbon, we want to taste it in 2 stages. One stage is for the palate. That's everything in your mouth. That's what the bourbon actually tastes like to you in your mouth. Then we're looking for the finish. The finish is going to go right past all your taste buds, and you're going to give a big, deep sigh out. You're going to see how long the whiskey stays with you, if you can taste anything different, and what the whiskey tastes like after you've drank it. Cool? So if we don't mind, I will do a toast and we will drink. Come guess me this riddle, what beats pipes and fiddle, what's hotter than mustard and milder than cream, what best wets your whistle, what's clearer than crystal, what's sweeter than honey and stronger than steam, what can make the dumb talk, what can make the lame walk, what's the elixir of life and philosopher's stone, and what helped Mr. Brunel to oh, I was so close. We're gonna try that one more time. Sorry guys, I want to get it all done. Come guess me this riddle, what beats pipes and fiddle, what's hotter than mustard and milder than cream, what best wets your whistle, what's clearer than crystal, sweeter than honey, and stronger than steam, what can make the dumb talk, what can make the lame walk, the elixir of life and philosopher's stone, and what helped Mr. Brunel to dig the Thames Tunnel? Wasn't that whiskey from Elderness, Sean? Cheers to you guys. One small one first, we'll talk about the palate, and then a big one, we'll talk about the finish. That thing that I did was not because I feel like I'm losing a tooth. That is called the Kentucky Chew, the Kingston Nash, or the Kingston, what do we call it? Anyway, it's called the Kentucky Chew. Basically, you want that whiskey to hit every part of your tongue, every part of your inner mouth. If you have canker sores or you got cold sores or whatever's going on, it's going to burn a little bit. It's important to do the chew through the burn, because you want to see what part of your mouth is getting all those flavors. Different parts of your tongue will give you different parts of flavor. So look for that in here. In this palette, I am grabbing honey. I'm grabbing almonds, which I guess would be part of the wood. Since this is a 10-year-old bourbon, we're going to catch a lot of those woods in here. So catching some cinnamon, some almonds. We got, I catch a touch of stone fruit, etc. A little sweet, but complex. Sweet, dry, sweet, dry. It's going back and forth. Let's see what our palate is. That's not true. Let's see what our finish is. The finish is a much more fun version of this. Just go right past your tongue, into your belly, nice deep sigh out, not like you're blowing out birthday candles, not like you're warming up your hands, but like you have to fire your childhood dog from his, you hired your childhood dog for some reason to work at your office job, and now you have to fire him. It's sad. It was almost sad. That's what we're looking for, and we're going to notice how long it sticks around, and if we notice any other flavors. Cheers. I love this whiskey. Yeah. In this, I noticed that the honey sticks around. I wrote more notes. Give me 1 second. Yeah. In this one, I noticed that the honey sticks around. I'm catching notes of cherry, things like the stone fruit that we were talking about. Certainly the honey. I'm catching a touch of fig. These are the fruits we're looking for. If I look for it, just the dryness that's sort of left after a long finish, I can catch some mint in here. Very complex whiskey, and especially helps if you remember what bourbon is supposed to bring. It certainly helps if you remember what bourbon is supposed to bring. Just remember those 5 different categories that bourbon should bring to you. I'm not saying those are the only things you'll find in there, but certainly those are the ones to look for. If something else hits you, if you suddenly get a cream in there, if you get banana in there, if you get grass in there, these are all fine things to find, but look for the first 5 and then go from there. Cool. All right. I mentioned about taking notes on the aroma. Also take notes on the taste, on the palate, and on the finish, and be as specific as possible. This tastes like cherry is different than this tastes like cherry cola versus this tastes like when I used to work at my grandfather's baseball card shop, and every year on 7-Eleven on July 11th, we would get to go over to the 7-Eleven and get free cherry and Coke Slurpees. This sort of tastes like that version of cherry Coke versus just a can of cherry Coke. That's more specific. It's more specific. It helps jar your memory. It helps get anybody that you are leading through this or anybody else that you're just drinking with to start thinking about their memories and how they can how they can attach that to what we're up to. Take notes. Oh. David, yes, Butopia, this is Eagle Rare that we're drinking. All right. In this tasting, if we're not just tasting the one, what if we brought in a couple extra whiskeys? Right here, I'm going to bring in this guy right here. This is Elijah Craig, made by Heaven Hill. It's got the Beam Boys, literally Jim Beam's progeny, run this little distillery here. And then I have this Rabbit Hole High Gold High Rye Double Malt Bourbon. Why would I pair these guys together? I paired them all together because they all have a similar ABV. They're off by a couple points. They're both in the 45 to 47 ABV, right in that area. So that's great. I don't have to worry too much about somebody having a crazy amount of ABV, alcohol by volume, and somebody being basically water. I don't have to worry about that. Then I can start to look for the differences. We mentioned that our Eagle Rare, right there, is 10 years old. I happen to know that this one is 4 years old, and this one is 8 to 12 years old. Those can be big differences right there. More time in the barrel equals more of those lignins, equals more of those polyphenols, equals more of those tannins, equals more of that flavor. taste them up against each other. We start to look for that. I also happen to know that while, you know what? I'm gonna mess that one up, and I'm not gonna do it. What else do I know about these guys? Oh, I happen to know that they have different rye content. Each of these has slightly different rye content. So instead of looking for alcohol, I can start to look for things like rye. Which one is dry? So I have the alcohol set, I have the wood set, I have the fact that it's at least 51% corn, but what's the percentage of everything else? We have all that sort of set up in these guys. All we do then, pour these out, give them the sniff test, give them a little taste, decide which one we like, and then pick your favorite. I think it's important to pick your favorite. Write it down. Even if in 3 months you come back and you're like, ooh, I don't know what I was thinking, that's great. At that point of the day, maybe the breakfast burrito was sitting with you better than the chilaquiles that you had earlier this morning. I only eat Mexican food for breakfast. Maybe they were sitting differently at that point, and you tasted something different. It's interesting to see your evolution. Okay. Put these off to the side. How long have I been going? Oh my God. This is supposed to be a 10-minute video. This is not, I'm not going to make it. I think I might know too much. Okay, one last bit. If you want to start experimenting with different versions of whiskey tastings, there's a couple ways you can do it. The one that's going to give you the best results is adding a little bit of water. 2 ways you can add a little bit of water. One, take a little bit of spring water. Some spring water, some tap water would be great. Anything but distilled water. And go ahead and put just a couple drops of water into your whiskey. That will help open it up. How does it help open it up? I read on nature.com, and I'll link the article down here, that scientists have no idea. They really have no idea why it does that, why when you put in water into here. They have some theories, they have some thoughts, but they don't have a real explanation. So I don't owe you an explanation. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give it to you. All right. Another way that you can add a little bit of water to this and also add a little bit of cold, pour this into a larger glass. Find yourself large ice cubes or large ice spheres is even a little bit better. If you can, make them clear. You can see other videos on my channel. Put this away. You can see other videos on my channel. Let's get all this cleaned up. Let's be a professional television studio, please. There we go. You can see other videos on my channel about how to make ice clear. It does make ice melt a little slower, and slower melting is always going to be better. But just take a little bit of ice, toss it in here. What this is going to do is it is going to chill the whiskey. By chilling the whiskey, you're going to take away some of those big ethanol flavors. It is also going to put a little bit of water into the whiskey, and it's going to bring out those flavors. Once you've written everything down, once you have picked your favorite, I say just drink your favorite for the rest of the night and wake up tomorrow. Maybe you'll hate the whiskey tomorrow because, you know, you drink a lot of whiskey. It hurts. So be careful with that. And now I believe that you all have the tools to host your very own bourbon tasting. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to help out, I have a Patreon. I also have a Venmo. I have a PayPal. I do classes Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We have a thriving community of some of the nicest people on the internet. So come join us there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and whatever else YouTube requires of us these days. So that is that. Thank you so much, and cheers. We did it. All right. Okay, that's not the end. I should be the end. I've kept you guys way too long. I just want to say hello to a few people while they're here. I'm not going to go through every comment, but thank you, UF Mark, for giving us the eagle. Cush mom Susan, it'd be so lovely to meet you in Arizona. People are very excited about meeting my mom in Arizona at Tiki Oasis. I've only had Eagle Rare once, and it didn't make an impression. That is fine. Oh, don't forget to put this in. When choosing a favorite whiskey, I usually go by three things. When choosing a favorite whiskey, I usually go by 3 criteria. 1, do I like it? You got to like the whiskey. 2, can I afford it? You can't afford the whiskey, can't be your favorite. If you can't drink it all the time, it can't be your favorite whiskey. And 3, can you find it? I have a wonderful whiskey that I love more than all other whiskeys. I can only buy it in Buffalo, New York. I live in Los Angeles. I am not flying to Buffalo and bringing back 12 bottles of Hartman's whiskey. So those are the criteria for putting down a favorite. We'll just put that back in. Finding a lot of Buffalo Trace on the shelf at MSRP. All right, good. We do get Buffalo Trace as low as $20 here. I have a bunch of that. Found a nip of Keiko cask, a little too harsh for my neat taste. Glad to try Japanese whiskey. Japanese whiskey, delicious. I did Pong with moonshine once. Bad choice. Naked, that is a real bad choice. This is a really, really bad choice. Not great. I did Pong with Washington apple shots. Horrible choice. SoCo, apple pucker, and cranberry. He was a professional bartender at one point. Just like to remind everybody that. Let's see who else we got. Tom, are you and the missus coming to Tiki Oasis? People, the inquiring minds want to know. Cheers to you there, Nakey. Cheers to you, Bonbon. A little woohoo. Love the toasts. That one today was from an old song called The Humors of Whiskey. We are awesome. Some of the greatest people there are. 3 perfect. Did it. Whiskey is like the bridal dress. If you can't afford the price, don't try it. I couldn't agree more, Mrs. Tiki Tom. Whiskey is like the bridal dress. If you can't afford it, don't even put it on. Don't even try it. You might fall in love. And then you're at your wedding naked for some reason. Thank you, everybody, for showing up to Behind Thur Scenes. We are still working on getting a guest this week. If we do not have a guest this week, then we will have another great show on Saturday where everybody will show up and hang out and play and drink and sing and dance and whatever else the heck we do. Really great breakdown of a bourbon tasting. Thank you, Paul. It's going to be a 45-minute video on YouTube, and that completely defeats the point of filming these ahead of time. Either way, that's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much. We will be back here on Saturday to do what we do. I have to go get dinner ready, but in the meantime, oh, thank you. Love the jacket. It used to fit. It almost does again. As long as I don't breathe, I'm good. Pop that button right off. Thank you, Bonbon. Okay, that's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into Dr. Cush's Exotic Drinks, and I will see you guys the next time. As always, bye-bye.